Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about something so simple yet so sadistic, something a common issue that we all tend to face, and that is vice. Yes. So today we're going to be talking a little bit differently today, just about vices. Habits, addictions. How you, as an individual, probably have one, and as I, an individual, have many, and how you maybe possibly could garner some deliverance with what I'm about to tell you today about them. Now, obviously, addiction is an incredibly complex topic that should not just be attributed to habit, as there are many substances that are actually, addictive for your brain, going into narcotics, things like that. But today we're going to be talking, bypassing some of the physical requirements that some of us become reliant through, certain narcotics, ethanol, things like that when we hit a certain extreme, we become addicted to it and can actually, face our demise if we try and just cold turkey cut it. Today I'm going to be talking, bypassing those variables and onto the ones that are more like your habits, your addictions that you as an individual face, but can rectify on your own terms without needing medical intervention or anything like that. If you actually do face things that are more extreme in that regard, seek professional assistance. And even if you're facing just minute addiction or minute habits that you find are really destructive for your well-being, again, there's nothing wrong with seeking out professional assistance. I'm not a professional in any capacity. I'm just an idiot who actually has found themselves with multiple vices, multiple habits that have become incredibly dangerous for my own well-being, etc. I've gone through a lot of it, I've relapsed into a lot of it, and I've also found myself more capable of overcoming it nowadays. But today we're going to be talking mainly about, how you might be able to overcome the habit. Now, I always treat addictions like they're habits. I do not let myself go, I'm addicted to something, unless I say it jokingly. But I do not typically allow myself to look at my alcohol consumption, my smoking utilization, because I do smoke cigarettes. It's not good. It's not good. I do not like that, but I'm just pointing out, I always tell myself whether it's, overeating or, whatever, any other kind of thing that isn't severe narcotic. But I play my hand at a lot of stuff. I fall into a lot of habits. Now, for some people, that bad habit might just be waking up really late. You stay up late too much, you start sleeping in, and then you're, awake in the afternoon or later. I used to be way worse about that. I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something, sleep through school. I used to never go to school. Now, that's another story for a different day. But for some of you, it might just be sleeping in. It might be, procrastination. It might be something super simple, something that isn't even a substance, but an act that you perform. And for others, it might be alcohol. It might be smoking cigarettes. It might be other things. Now, I'm not trying to immediately have this video suppressed algorithmically, but I don't know if there's any way I cannot, because I'm going to be saying certain things that probably will have it suppressed in some capacity. But in general, I'm going to mainly be focusing on the more minute variables, not the severely addictive. So if you find yourself with the severely addictive, I don't know how much this video will help you. But the number one thing I remember when I've faced bad behavioral issues, very bad behavioral issues that I don't feel comfortable exposing on this channel as of yet. Perhaps later I'll open up to more of my issues. But, when I've found myself with really bad behavioral issues or a really bad habit of utilizing certain things like alcohol and cigarettes, working in the restaurant industry, those are the things that you find yourself really attracted to because everybody's doing something like that. And also, you're always surrounded by alcohol, and the number one thing you do usually when you find yourself available, to hang out with your coworkers after work is have a drink. And maybe it was a stressful day, so you have two. And maybe you're having fun, so you have three. And maybe you just feel like going wild, so you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you wake up with a really bad hangover and you're throwing up, or you're in the hospital because you find yourself with alcohol poisoning. Now, I've never done that because I don't have medical and have a severe fear of ever ending up in a hospital in America. But what I'm trying to make is, there's a point where it goes from being just a simple endeavor, something that you do for minute pleasure, sociability, light little antics, fun, to an extreme that becomes so incredibly dangerous for your own well-being that it destroys your life. Maybe it drains all your money. Maybe it takes all your happiness and passion away from life, and maybe it turns you into an entirely new person, a significantly more venomous and useless person, a dead person, basically a corpse of a human being who has been completely eviscerated through the utilization of something that is truly harmful for your well-being that you have taken as if it is a good thing, whether you think it's a good thing or not. Now, the best piece of advice I can give when it comes to these kinds of things is the first thing you have to do is know that you are in a bad habit with something. Whether it's sleeping in, whether it's procrastinating, whether it is, using something like drinking or smoking cigarettes or anything like that, the number one thing you have to do is know the idea of knowing you have a problem, blah, 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 blah. But being aware of your problems shows that there's a problem. So you need to be aware of it. If you're in a state of falsified reality, if you're in a state of ignorance, there's very little redemption in you actually overcoming it because you will not endeavor to change. The first thing you need to do is want the change. Know there's an issue. Or maybe you know there's an issue and you don't want to change. But let's say hypothetically, you know there's an issue. You want to change. How do you do it? First, you have to start telling yourself and repeatedly reminding yourself. This is how I've gotten out of it, at least in my personal opinion. I don't know what will work for you, but in my personal opinion, the number one thing I've done is say, this is a problem, it needs to stop. This is a problem, it needs to stop. And you can physically repeat that to yourself. You can mentally repeat that to yourself. You can tell yourself that in the mirror every day. You can put things on your mirror, like notes, to say, I don't want to do this thing anymore. Whatever the case is, but you have to drill it into your head that this thing that you're doing is bad. And then the next step is actually changing it. How do you change it? For some of us, just weaning off of something works. We go from having 5 drinks a day to 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then none. Or maybe every now and then we have a drink. Or we stop smoking as much, so we limit our cigarette intake. We can take a pack of empty cigarettes because we blow through so many goddamn cigarettes, and then we take a certain finite amount from our pack of cigarettes, and we put those in there. And then we keep those, and we say, I'm not smoking more than this pack of cigarettes every single day. And we slowly cut down the amount. You can do the same thing with alcohol. Don't leave alcohol in your house if you find that you're having a bad habit with it. And when you go out, give yourself a drink limit. Pay out your tab every single time that you order one drink, and don't let yourself go to the bar again. Don't have an open tab, Don't have an open tab at a bar. Have a single drink, pay out, and then, stagnate it. Stagnate it as much as possible. Now, the problem is we find ourselves really hyped up with the desire to keep going and indulge more and feel the thing that feels really good to us in the moment even more, even if it doesn't feel good after a certain point of doing it. Like, there's a certain point where if you become intoxicated through ethanol consumption, there's a threshold where you're gonna not feel so good, and you're definitely not gonna feel so good the next day. But we still do it anyways for whatever reason. Now, the worst thing is when you're actually really good about not having a hangover, because a hangover can teach you a lot. It can make you think, God, why did I do this? Why did I drink so much beer last night? Why did I do shots? And, sometimes it just takes a few extremes to make you never want those extremes again. Sometimes going too hard can make you never want to be hard again. And, that sounded very naughty, but you know what I mean. The other thing, though, maybe, personally, for me, I don't really get a hangover. I can drink a lot, and I can just wake up and I'm good to go. For some reason, whatever the case may be, maybe it's my Italian genetics, maybe it's my Greek genetics, maybe it's the fact that I'm an alcoholic. I don't know. But either way, the point I'm trying to make to you is you need to know that there's a problem, and you need to start getting away from the problem. You can wean down, but personally, when I tell myself there's a problem and I need to stop, I usually just stop it cold turkey. I'm the kind of person who, if you give me an inch, I'll take a mile. You give me an inch, I'll at least give you a couple extra feet. So when it comes to me telling myself I'm only gonna have this much drink-wise, I can usually do that too, but I just find it easier to be like, if it's not necessary for my life, if it's not like drinking water or exercising or, eating food or something that I have to balance out, which I have had issues with all of those things minus the water, but I've always had issues with, eating too much or too little. I've always had, and that's kind of like the part of finding balance. The number one thing you can't do is combat that constantly, because then it'll become more and more chaotic and more out of balance. So you just need to find a good balance and relax. And this is the other issue, is relaxing. But let me get into that in a minute. Exercise is another one. Some people don't ever want to exercise. Maybe that's you. Some people find that exercise is actually good to break out of a habit. It lets you work on your health. It gives you endorphins. But also, there are people who exercise too much, and now we're in a very toxic era where on social media, we're always feeling the pressure to exercise. And I've done that before. I've had points in my life, especially when I was a teenager. I remember I was exercising like 6 hours a day. I'm not kidding. Now I exercise a pretty normal amount. Like I do an hour a day and then I call it. But I've been in positions where when I find myself in a high stress state, I'll want to work out more because it brings down the anxiety, or at least it diverts my anxiety to something that actually elevates my heart rate instead of just has me freaking out inside, And I feel like a lot of people have that same issue. And it's not just with, working out. It's about, I'm sorry I'm rambling. I really don't have a script for this. I'm going off. But the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of us, we can go through this, point of cold turkey. We can also find other things to help us cope and divert from the vices, but we also have a high chance of turning our coping mechanisms into other vices, which is what we do. Like we face stress or anxiety or depression, and then we look into other things. Maybe for some people it's intercordial relationships. A lot of people do that, We're in an era also where we're not told to obviously shame people for their sexual encounters or anything like that, but in general, some people have had addictions to intercordial relations just so that they can cope with their own being, because there's pleasure in intercourse. It's the same thing with alcohol. There's pleasure in intoxication. Other narcotics, there's pleasure in intoxication. Smoking, there's a deliverance. It's like your stress goes to something else. And it's the same thing, ironically, when you are smoking, is that you become more and more stressed because nicotine will, it heightens stresses. It's not a good thing. Now, I'm trying to point out to you, none of these things are good things. We can just get away with doing some of these things, like drinking, on even a common basis without having them be addictive. It's based on your state of mind. Personally, there are times where I tell myself, cold turkey, not gonna do it. And I usually, at this point, I would have a lot more issues with this in the past. I would struggle with this a lot more when I was younger, because also I was, an underdeveloped mind. But when you start learning how to overcome the thing, and you even fall into it again, like say you break a really bad habit, but you fall back into that habit again, it gets easier and easier each time to break that habit again. And the number one hardest thing to do is break it the first time. So I need to implore you to keep on endeavoring to break the habit, because eventually when you do, even if you fall back into it, do not discourage yourself. I'm so sorry I'm rambling so much, but the point I'm trying to make is endeavor to break the habit, whether you need help from other people, whether you don't need help from other people, whether you feel like you can do it on your own or you can do it on your own, and maybe you have done it on your own, The point I'm trying to make, though, is that the hardest thing you can possibly do is break it the first time. And if you break it the first time, you have the faith in yourself that you can break it again and again and again. And that's the part of life that I really have to point out. Life is not finite in regards to the things that you do in life or the things you experience in life. Sometimes you'll experience the same problem over and over again. It's just part of human nature. And sometimes you're going to face the same vices over and over again. You might relapse. Maybe you have, disorderly behavior. Maybe you've had an eating disorder. Maybe you have depression, anxiety. Maybe you have, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a combination of all these variables. The number one thing is find the toxic behavior and know that it's toxic behavior. And then find a mechanism, a coping mechanism, or a cold turkey cutoff, or whatever the thing may be. Find something. Find some kind of coping tactic or something. Or just a new habit to help fill in for that habit. But that's also a dangerous game because, again, that habit might become toxic for you as well. But either way, somehow you will be able to, as long as you can break that habit and stick with it. Maybe if it's even for just a couple of days or a day, then you can do it again, and then you break it for longer. You become stronger. You do it again. You break it for longer, and you become stronger through that. And, life is constant relapse into things. It's just about how you react to that relapse that you're in a better headspace, that you stay out of it, And we all face a lot of stuff during our lives. Maybe you're not struggling with something now. Maybe you have in the past. Maybe you're going to struggle with it in the future. Maybe you've needed external sources to help you in fighting it off in the past or in the future. Maybe you're going to need help. Maybe you didn't need help, but now you need help. Either way, as long as you endeavor to bypass your current vices, you will always succeed. The only time you fail is when you destroy yourself or you give up. Now, I usually tell myself, and this is much more violent sounding, so, I have to tell you. I usually tell myself the worst things. If I find myself in a bad habit, I give myself the extremes and say it's going to happen to me. The girls that are, with images of decay on their faces or whatever the case may be with smoking or cancer or everybody hating me, nobody wanting me in their lives because I'm a smoker, whatever the case may be, I really will push it. And I fall into lapses where I smoke way more, and then I stop smoking a little bit, and then I smoke way less, and then I start smoking way more again, and I tell myself it's time to cut it down, because also it messes with your lungs. Same thing with drinking. I tell myself, okay, well, I don't like when I'm drunk, because it makes me stupid, and it makes me lazy when I wake up, and it impairs my time, and it makes all these other things, and it's gonna kill my liver. Like, I'll just say I'm gonna push alcoholism on my family, or I'll say I'm gonna be a bad influence on my future children. I'm gonna be a bad influence on my future nephews and nieces. I'm gonna be a bad influence of an individual. I'm gonna be a marker of failing society. I'm gonna be the worst person on the planet. I literally will be extreme and brutal to myself, and I'm very pessimistic. I have an inferiority complex that I use to propel me forward. There are a lot of other individuals with that level of inferiority complex that will pull themselves back. I'm hard on myself because I know that when I'm hard on myself, I get more done. And even if it hurts my head, it won't hurt my life. You know what I mean? But I'm not trying to implore you to do that. I'm not trying to encourage that you do something so, ruthless to yourself or so mean or so venomous. I'm just saying sometimes grace and kindness are the best things you can also give to yourself. The number one thing you have to do is be good to yourself. You need to take care of yourself. Maybe there's an element of your life that you're missing. Maybe there's something like, companionship or friendship, because we all seem to lack friends these days. Maybe there's a grace, self-care. Maybe you're not taking care of yourself. And instead of taking care of yourself in future, you're just beating yourself up, and then you're finding pleasure in your vices because it's the only deliverance you have, the only relief that you have, There are so many compounding variables to it, but the number one thing you have to do is understand that your vices are finite and that you can do it. You can take care of yourself. It might take time, it might take external assistance, it might take, constant trial and error and relapse, or maybe it's a really simple act that's going to be super easy as long as you understand that you can change or that you need to change. Because a lot of us push ourselves to desperate situations before we actually change. Who's gonna change more? The guy who's literally smoking and then finds himself with lung cancer, or someone who just got into smoking and does it for fun and doesn't think about the problem? Personally, I think the person with cancer is gonna be more inclined to stop because they know they're destroying themselves and pushing their body to a limit. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying that to stop your vices is a good thing. And to even recognize or practice stopping the vice or stopping the habit temporarily and exploring how it feels without it. The fear of having it, the anxiety of having it, the anxiety of not having it more so, actually. The anxiety of not having your vice and the feeling you might experience when you're indulgent in that vice, or the ramifications of you not doing what you think you need to do, it's not good. Exploring the mind without that is so liberating, and it's so beyond the scope of what most of us allow ourselves to experience because we're afraid of the unknown, so we fear not having our vice. Maybe we fear not being in a state of pleasure or relief, or maybe we fear what will happen to us, our bodies, our minds without it, That's a very important thing, and I really want to discuss more about the topic, but the number one thing I have to tell you is I encourage you, practice no longer indulging in your vices. Practice breaking habits, and practice taking care of yourself, and tell yourself, practice the number one thing you need to do, and tell yourself is that you can overcome what you face, whether you need more help, or whether you feel like you can do it on your own, or whatever the case might be. Even if you feel like you have nobody to talk to, even if you feel like you're truly alone, even if you feel like you can't stop, you need to start telling yourself that you can change and that you can stop. And that's the number one piece of advice I can give to you. I can't really tell you how to overcome your problems. I can't tell you how to break every habit. I can't tell you what's going to work for you, but the number one thing I can tell you is that if you endeavor to do something, no matter how long or how many trials and tribulations you'll face, you can do it. So that was the video. I know that it was kind of a weird video, a motivational video, but it's something that does hit deep because I find myself, and I know many other people find themselves, in states of habit and vice and self-induced evil and, dogma and brutality. And all of these things And it's the human experience. This is part of life. You know, what you're experiencing now is part of life, and it is part of also life for you to overcome it and understand the adversities that you face are not overpowering you, that you have power over yourself and over the things that you experience. And again, maybe, like, I'm not trying to push you into reading about Stoicism, but again, Stoicism does teach you a lot about this. The act of moderation, the act of overcoming vice, the act of not being willed by your passions, you know, by your emotions, by the things you feel, by the things that you desire, you know? So again, I know I'm not trying to push things on you. I'm not trying to make you sell your souls into a faith or a feeling or a philosophy. But I do implore you to just look at some quotes or motivate yourself. Look at things that you find drive your passion to stop the habit, whether it's motivational videos online, whether it's philosophy, whether it's friends or family, whether it's your own future beliefs, whether it's your own future perspective. Where do you want to be in the future? Do you want to be an alcoholic in the future? Do you want to be a user of narcotics in the future? Do you want people to be surrounded by what you surround yourself by? Do you want to be a smoker for the rest of your life? Do you want to abuse yourself for the rest of your life? Do you want a life where you're surrounded by vice and basically self-induced damnation, where you have all the power to change, but you don't change it because of your fear of not having something that you know hurts you? You know, it's like an abusive relationship. And I know it's all very violent and brash, and I know I'm a very brash person when I tell you all of this, but I must state it's merely because I'm incredibly passionate about this subject, and I know that myself and so many of you have faced so many similar things and fall into so many states of self-induced abuse that we feel so powerless to stop it, but we really do need to iterate to ourselves. And it's so hard to do nowadays when everyone says that, you know, it's okay to be weak or it's okay to be in this physical state. We use it to kind of victimize ourselves and not actually feel like we have the power to change. So I really want to iterate to you, no matter how much of a victim of your own circumstances, whether it's imposed by you or others, that you find yourself in, no matter what you need, no matter how much help you need, no matter the professionalism you need, or no matter the lack thereof, I really must iterate to you that you do have the power to change, no matter what. So that was the video. By all means, the number one thing, please take care of yourselves. This is the only body you have. This is the only mind that you have. And this is the only life that you have in the world that we know. So please take care of yourselves, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please comment anything below that you're currently kind of facing with, or that you want to give advice for. However you feel, by all means do comment if you so desire. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Slater.